Well, some good news. The Daily Signal is back in the White House press briefing room. You might recall the Biden regime kicked them out, along with 400 other media outlets, to minimize scrutiny. Unbelievable, ladies and gentlemen. Well, that's another thing President Trump is fixing, delivering on its commitment to transparency by expanding the briefing room to include outlets that have never been given the opportunity to cover the White House before. Joining me now is Tony Kinnett, an investigative columnist at the Daily Signal. So, Tony, you posted on X that these changes will ensure that Americans get answers, not just New York Times and CNN talking points. Is that happening?
It actually is. So I host a 7 p.m. show, and I'm watching the White House press briefing, including the comments from friends and colleagues that you, Todd, have watched growing up. Of course, I'm sure we seem just like scruffy kids still wet behind the ears getting into this game. And it keeps me hopping because the questions are moving so fast on, unlike the Biden administration, more than one topic per press briefing. Americans are getting answers. Later on, I'm getting inundated with emails on the follow-up questions that Secretary Leavitt said very clearly she would address and get back to the reporter on. This is a new era for transparency in a press briefing from the White House.
Does it feel like that the playing field is starting to level out here, or does the legacy media still have the upper hand?
I think the playing field feels like it's opening up. You know, when you're on the interstate, you're behind a car, then there's another car in the lane, and you get free, and all of a sudden you have the whole interstate before you. This is what it feels like right now for the American media sphere. So long we've been compressed into this ideological left grip. And now that we have the Trump administration, now that Elon Musk brought forward X and released a lot of the censorship on the platform, and then Mark Zuckerberg was kind of forced to follow suit, this is an opportunity for individuals with talent, individuals with ambition, individuals with good questions, good analysis, to actually move forward and provide that to the American people, and then let the free market decide whose opinions are worth elevating and whose are relegated to the trash bin of history.
So earlier today, President Trump in the Oval Office, he was signing an executive order. Caitlin Collins from CNN, she just blurts something out. President Trump was not ready to take questions and basically put her in her place. I mean, when I was growing up, you don't speak unless you're spoken to. All of this goes back to the Associated Press being booted out of the Oval Office. Was that the right call for the White House to make, giving AP the heave-ho?
You know, at first I really wasn't quite sure, and then I actually heard the explanation behind it, and I talked to another individual who was in the room in that small kind of hallway area where the decision was made, and it appeared that the White House had invited some members of the press to take some photos, to ask a couple of questions if there was time later on, because again, unlike former President Biden, Trump is taking questions whenever he can. That doesn't mean the president is now just a free-for-all buffet and that all of his time is to be spent talking to media. So I think that as far as Caitlin Collins is concerned at CNN or the Associated Press reporter who, again, the editorial standards of when names are or are not changed for geographical locations, I'm really starting to see a trend of the White House not taking any guff from left-leaning media, and I hope it continues.
Yeah, President Trump making some comments. He was asked why Canada should become a 51st state. Let's watch this.
Take a look at what's going on out there. You have Russian ships, you have China ships, you have Chinese ships, you have a lot of ships out there, and you know, people are in danger. This is a different world today. It's a different world. They need our protection.
Yeah, I'm not. Look, I think that the reality here is that Trump is willing to take questions on a lot of different topics. And I'm always impressed that the guy seems to be able to know everything. He doesn't get the questions in advance, which is certainly a stark difference than the last administration.
Kind of unique, isn't it? I got to say, there's something about watching Trump talk about topics that he's very knowledgeable on. And I saw this for the first time when I was covering him in just north of Detroit. In the Clinton Township, he was speaking to some auto workers, and he described aspects of the auto working industry and the auto manufacturing industry. To be real, he had no business knowing an individual of his status and with his background. And then a couple of months later, he turned around and gave a detailed explanation of water process and environmental processes in California. regarding their environmental efforts that eventually ended up causing and exacerbating those California wildfires. So to see him speak on these topics is excellent. And then he gets out the bluster. He gets out the same negotiation strategy, which is where he kind of leans forward and has a good time saying, well, maybe we ought to own Canada. It's a rough world out there. It sure would be a shame if Governor Trudeau came over to the United States. And I got to tell you, maybe I'm supposed to take that more seriously, but so far I just can't stop laughing. This is great.
All right, Tony Kinnett, welcome back to the White House. Thank you for coming on Newsmax tonight.
Thanks very much, Todd.